Hello, welcome to the 92nd episode of Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave and Gio. How is everybody?
Doing well today. Thank you. Oh, Gio, your mic cut back out. We're the audio again.
Oh dear. Good to be back. Thank you for having
Yes.
us, and thank you for joining us, everybody.
Yes, here we are today, the 48th anniversary of Star Wars.
Indeed. That's just crazy to think that 27 celebration is going to be 50, and we're just, wow.
It'll be 49 and 10 months.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It will be.
I don't know why they didn't schedule it for the actual 50th anniversary. Would have been a lot smarter.
That would have made a lot more sense, wouldn't it? If actually having us there on May the 25th.
And have an actual screening on like the celebration floor on the exhibit hall floor on the 25th. If you were
or it's in LA. Like do a screening at the Chinese theater, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll accommodate everybody from Celebration.
Well, no, but you could do all the places down on that strip. You could do the Chinese and all that. You know what I'm saying?
The Dolby Theater, the Nokia Theater, whatever
exactly.
Now. Yeah. Reenact those big lines that I just know from seeing documentaries about 1977, where the lines just go down the strips and the plazas and around the corners, and people queuing up for this new Star Wars thingy.
Yeah, that new thing, whatever it is.
I just remember when The Rise of Skywalker came out, and I heard that, ahead of seeing it, there was this description that there was going to be an in-universe commemoration of 42 years, which is the planet that our heroes start out on, the non-Tatooine, non-Jakku, another desert planet, and there's the species there that's doing its 42-year celebration, and it's because it was at that time 42 years since the original Star Wars. And I was thinking then, wow, that's a huge amount of time. And now here we are in 2025, and we're closer to 50, closer to Big 5-0.
So we just finished a recent Star Wars show. Andor has reached its end with 4 3-episode arcs racing us through 4 different calendar years, or not through them, but separating them.
Well, but not doing an entire year, which was kind of like what we anticipated to begin with, or at least I did. But they were picking out and showing you the greatest 4 or 5 days from those years.
Yeah, so I guess we'll go arc by arc.
Yeah.
So the first arc.
Well, let me start with, before we get to the arcs, is I did not love this format of going with the arcs and the 3 episodes, just because dropping at 9:00 Eastern on a Tuesday night, that is so too much to consume.
Well, you don't have to watch it all at once. You have a whole week to watch it whenever you want.
Well, yeah, but you know our friends. You have a whole week to watch it, but you have to watch it sooner rather than later, or it's going to get spoiled for you.
Not if you just don't go checking out the chats at the group page.
I don't know. I get Skip texting me every 5 minutes. Have you seen it? Can we talk about it? Have you seen it yet? And I'm like, damn it, no. So,
yeah, but I came across a little interview that I highly recommend everyone check out with Tony Gilroy. I think it's by the Rotten Tomatoes have an official interview with most of the cast and Tony Gilroy. It's about 30 minutes long, and um, the interviewer goes and asks Tony Gilroy, like, what was the plan behind this, and how did it come about, this new format for season 2 versus season 1? And he was very frank and honest about it. He was saying that they had wrapped season 1 and they were in a rural part of Scotland in a pub decompressing after a final day of shooting. It was Tony, it was Diego, and it was a few of the producers. And they were saying, so far, the plan going ahead is we'll do 5 years going up, so 5 seasons in total, building into Rogue One. And then they just looked at their calendars and looked over each other, and Tony apparently went to Diego and said, but but by that time Diego's going to be hitting 60, and by the time I finish this, I'll be needing a memory care unit in some kind of convalescence hospital. So
Not that, Diego wouldn't be that old. It was a 10-year schedule.
Yeah, he was
I mean, how old is he? How old is Diego? I have no idea.
I guess he's mid-40s. I'd guess.
Really?
He's definitely not going to be 60,
that
but
old.
it's definitely going to be.
Diego is
45. Wow.
Yeah, I mean he looks great. The whole cast look great. Even the ones from Rogue One don't look like they've aged much at all, which I think helps with the continuity going in through season 2 and fast forwarding over 4 years. But so originally the plan was from the higher ups that they were going to do 4 years and do 5 total seasons. That was never officially clear to us as fans. That was definitely going to be the plan, and then it changed. I think we, as a general audience, found out many months later that they were going to compress everything and do it with that intentionality. But essentially, his plan was to say, we'll cycle through it in these arcs, these blocks, these 3 episodes, and each one will represent a year. And rather than it being, as Dave, you mentioned, over the course of a whole year's events, it will be, Tony genuinely said, it'll be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the middle of that year. So we're kind of jumping in and catching our characters that we know about and some of the newer ones, having their little slices of life during this Imperial reign and this kind of, constructing of the Rebel Alliance and coming together of the Resistance over just, midweek, what's been going on, which is an interesting and very individual premise. There's no other TV show I've ever come across, watched, or heard of that has this kind of time structure the way that we had with season 2, and it definitely had pros and cons to it, I think.
Yeah, I mean the fact that they were arcs and you got the arcs together, it was a lot to really want to watch to get at the same time, but it was compelling enough that's why I'm complaining, is that I wanted to watch it all at once and see it at that whole time frame. I didn't want to watch it the way I inevitably kind of had to, which is, okay, I'm going to watch an episode and then I'll watch an episode. It's like, once one episode was done, no, I want to see the next one. I want to see the next one. I'm ready for it. So
yeah, I still wish the structure. I'm really happy that it was the full intention from the beginning, and they had this foresight from 2021 onwards, which is essentially 4 years of giving us season 2. And one of the best things about Andor, you can feel that it's a labor of love, but also it's intentionality, it's planning, it's creating a strategy for storytelling and sticking to it, which is the inverse of what we've got with some of the other Star Wars projects, whether it's on TV or as a sequel trilogy. But that's why I think it's almost like a collective sigh of relief when you come to talking about Andor, because it's something that has been orchestrated with a really tight schedule and control over things from the beginning, and it really feels like that when you watch it in comparison to other Disney Plus original shows.
Well, I wonder if a lot of it is it. Well, a lot of it is the people involved in it, and what they were doing is not to take credit or away from them for that, but having the end point is where this has to go, right? Is it has to go to Rogue One. That's where your stop point is. And so they could really focus on that, where I think a lot of the content that we've seen before just kind of wanders because there's not a given endpoint. And what it is like, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to go over there. This did go over here and over there, but all the over here and over there was bringing you. It started kind of almost like the Book of Boba Fett thing, where it's not about Boba Fett. It's about all the other people and things. This introduced us to a lot of new characters, but they were amazing new characters. That we've come into it. It did not feel as inorganic as some of the other did, to where, like, where's Boba Fett? You're like, we didn't so much go, where's Andor? We're like, what's happening with these people and how does it connect to Andor? We were okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think season 1 prepared us for that, so that season 2 could then continue with the kind of multitudes of storylines happening across the galaxy with the different characters that we want to check in with as an episode goes on. But yeah, it does.
Well, let's get back to what Kat was saying as we can go to. That's a good one, since we're talking about how it prepared, and get to the arcs is like, go ahead.
One casualty of this format is that you would have an arc end on a specific big end beat, and you couldn't follow the fallout of it because there's going to be a year time jump to the next episode. Particularly, which we'll get to when we talk about the end of the second arc. But and it's interesting how they chose to spend the runs. Like this first arc, and I like how this is a really low key thing. It's like, we're going to steal a prototype TIE fighter or TIE Advanced or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we can figure out its capabilities, all that kind of stuff. It's great. And that cold open where he goes to steal it, and you see the Imperial officer, whoever's like risking her life to give him the fighter. Like, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But then they spend the bulk of the first 2.5 episodes with Andor being taken prisoner by these bozos in the jungle. And they're trying to emphasize the idea that in the early days of the rebellion that they were incompetent, they didn't get along. And it's like, you kind of already did that with Saw Gerrera in Rogue One, showing that there's different factions who don't agree. And I don't know if it was the wisest use of screen time to spend the first 2 episodes of the second season with Andor being just batted around as a hostage in handcuffs with these nutcases. It's like, we're going to starve to death. It's like, you're in a jungle. There's like these big beasts coaxing them out. It's like, okay, that part got really grating. But I did like the stuff that was going on Mina Rao, not Lothal, as some people were thinking.
Right.
Where we find out that Cassian's friends are like Bix and Will Raw and the other guys are living undercover as undocumented workers at this farm, and the Empire comes looking for conscriptions and all that kind of stuff. And it's like a race against time because Cassian was supposed to pick him up a while ago, and he's having trouble getting away from the bozos on what is revealed to be Yavin 4.
Yeah.
And the internet got all in a tizzy over the attempted assault sequence, which is like, well, the Andor's a more adult series, so
it is.
I'm fine with it. I didn't think that was a problem, and I thought it added good tension and just really creepy. Because when I first heard on the internet that there was a scene like that, I assumed it was going to be between Cyril and Deidre, because I was getting real stalker vibes from Cyril at the end of season 1. Like, even when Cyril saved Deidre in the finale, she kind of looked at him like really creepy, like, oh my God, what are you doing here? So I was like, okay, that whole climax on Mina Rao was really good. The revelation that Cyril and Deidre are a couple really threw me. I'm like, what? I'm like, that was a bit much. Like, is she a control freak and just likes the idea of being able to boss around this weakling? Is that why she puts the mother in her place later on? Because she doesn't like the idea that somebody else can make him anxious beside herself? Maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that was kind of a surprise. Oh, and then we see the beginnings of, or the continuation, I should say, of the whole Death Star project with the Emperor needs this energy, the energy crisis needs to be resolved on Gorman because Gorman has this mineral that we need. We never find out what the mineral is, or what is it? More kyber crystals, maybe?
I think they said it was a thing. It was like a throwaway. I don't know that anybody really cared. But
I did love that scene though when Krennic has them all assembled
calcite.
in the room, and he's like, And he's like, look around. If your superiors aren't here, then they're not on the list. And I thought, ooh, he recognizes talent. And this whole season, I find that Krennic is actually a much more intimidating presence than Rogue One. Because in Rogue One, he's constantly getting bossed around and owned. In this one, he's actually in charge and like
Yeah,
breathing down
he is
people's
the
necks.
big
I thought he
bad
was
because
great.
they chose, and I think wisely, not to bring Vader and Palpatine into this even as cameos. I think that was, a wise choice.
Definitely. We've got that nice connection that works beautifully in Rogue One.
Sherry's saying Caltrite, something. I don't know. It was
That
a
sounds
thing. It
vaguely
was a
familiar.
name. It was nothing we
Yeah,
heard before. It was like they needed this and the Kyber because they alluded to, again, we know where we're going with Rogue One, the Kyber on Jeddah. So this was the setup and the first thing that they were doing that was going to allow them to do the same thing that they do over there.
Yes,
but
it was the deep substrated calcite, which was the excuse for the initial Imperial occupation of Gorman. And then, obviously, as we saw from the opening arc, they ramped that up going forward over the next 2 years to the point of, total excavation of the planet and all the obviously horrifying fallout for the population of Gorman afterwards. So yeah, I think it was great how it kind of brought in, because Gorman's been mentioned, not in a huge way, but at one or 2 points here and there in the current existing canon. It's referred to in Star Wars Rebels, and so this was one big kind of fault line of season 2 that Tony Gilroy and the crew were working towards. They knew that some of the huge story elements were a massacre on Gorman, the moment of defiance from Mon Mothma, and then her defection and escape. And this is what's come out in the interviews that I've watched with Tony Gilroy as well, saying that those are the kind of North Stars of the series, and then everything else was either informing and leading up to those moments or bringing the other characters, into the timing of when these events are happening and the fallout in other parts of the galaxy. And we see that, and we're also reminded how Star Wars' conception of time is very fantastical and very sci-fi fantasy, because you can move from one planet to another in a few hours, and
right.
that absolute genocide tragedy happened. That was just last night, and now we're in Senate talking about it, and it's all over the holonet. So that the use of time, I think, is quite interesting in Star Wars. And
Well, and I
there's
think it was a really good choice to bring in this event that had been in canon, but just kind of mentioned. It's like the entire thing of the entire series of the Clone Wars, right?
Well, they
Throwaway
retained it in
little line.
canon as well.
What's that?
They retained the original canon as well, which is that Tarkin went to Gorman, and they said it was a Star Destroyer, but obviously it wouldn't fit in that little square. But that it was landing, and there was protests, and he decided, we're just going to land on top of them and crush everyone to death, and they did. And in the second arc, you find out that the memorial there in the courtyard is for that incident, so they didn't violate the canon. They just said, okay, well, there's another massacre on top of that, which is great. I like it when they do that rather than just retconning something outright. They just add something else to it to say, hey, it never says this didn't happen.
Yeah, it's a much wiser take on incorporating.
Yeah, and I did love that scene also when Krennic first gives them the job of what they're going to do on Gorman, and they just sit around and start spitballing how they're going to completely destroy this planet's reputation and justify everything they're doing. It's like, Jesus. While they're sitting down eating croissants and putting butter on their toast, talking about it like it's such a casual thing.
It was such a deep dive and a historical comment on real life politics and military, and it just like, no, we're going to justify this with PR first, and we're going to change the opinion of everybody, that by the time that we actually do this, people are going to support it. It was a really deep dive into how evil the Empire is, because it's become so much over the course of the Star Wars series, the last 48 years or whatever, that, oh, we like the Empire. Oh, the Darth Vader is our favorite character, or I and it's like, no, we have to be reminded how terrible they are. And that, I think, is why the sexual assault scene was put in there, to remind them how terrible they are. And if you really look deep, and I don't know if it's in the consciousness of enough people that are younger than us, or that I swear I don't know if it's on purpose. I haven't seen anything. The room they were meeting in looks like Hitler's fortress, Eagle's Nest.
Yeah, even the outside of it, when you see when the cameras are first coming in, it
When the
totally.
cameras come in and look at it, that mountainous hideaway, the window, the tracery, the blocking in the windows is the same, and like the view outside of the mountains, and I was like, surely not, but something in that, because I had seen the historical photos of that, like, picked up, and it's like, this is a creepy freaking room. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, if they really did that on purpose, which I can't imagine they did not, as you're like, damn.
Well, that's where George got the name Stormtroopers from. Were the
Exactly.
Nazi stormtroopers?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
The whole
it's
thing
neat.
is they are space Nazis. They are bad guys. Let us not forget that. And that really
And
pushes
that's
that
the
home.
same thing and it's in Sinister, because that's like even relevant today. That's the same thing that all corporate-owned news organizations do as well. They get in their little boardrooms and say, "Well, how do we want to spin this? Let's just say this. We'll plant this. Blah blah blah." And it's the same kind of thing, except they're doing it for the purposes of genocide. And you knew, even though nobody said it, that the energy crisis at the Emperor, we all knew it was a Death Star project. Like, that wasn't even, you didn't even need to mention that, you know? And I like how sinister Deidre is, because Krennic goes over to her and he's like, "You already know what we need to do here. I can tell. Don't be shy. Tell me what it is." And how quickly she just coughs up the solution is like, man, this woman is evil. I don't care if you're drunk on the Kool-Aid. You're like, I've been hearing people say they feel bad for Deidre at the end of the season. I'm like, no, this is a level of depravity, evil that no.
Well, she
Yeah.
just became the scapegoat. Spoilers, and we're jumping ahead, but like, yeah, she got what she deserved, but there were a whole bunch of people else that needed to be in there with her.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's I don't know if it's purposeful. Again, is whether they were saying this is, why did the woman be the one that goes down? The only woman in the whole shabam of that, and that's
of
the one
course,
that
that's
takes
it.
the
It can't.
fall for it.
That's not
And
why. That's stupid. There's a
Yeah,
very
that's just
clear-cut reason and justified reason that Krennic gives, and we'll get to that when we get there.
yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
but yeah, continuing the first arc. I mean, I love the fact that it starts with the more pew pew. Is, I think, I don't know if Skip's in the chat or not today. Is Skip not so much a fan of season one because of this kind of slow burn, and it's like Law and Order or something in space, and you get all that, but this brought Skip back into the fold. Is like, oh, they're shooting people now. Yeah, the jungle. We needed to see how inept the rebels were. We had seen some of that in the Clone Wars, the first Saw Gerrera arcs and stuff in the Clone Wars, even though they weren't that inept. There was a lot of time spent on that you're right. I think we could have seen something else. But that's some of the criticisms of season one, is that there was an awful lot of time spent on Narkina 5 for the small payoff of their making parts.
I thought that was a good arc. It's only 2.5 episodes, and it keeps intercutting with other things, so it's not taking up a ton of time. But I thought that was a really well done arc on that show.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's about the same time. I think
And
maybe the content, not the time that was allotted to it, was better than the bozo rebels that are just like, hey, what can we do? Yeah, I don't know.
And yet, even with all the pew pew stuff going on in the first arc, I think the MVP storyline is Mon Mothma at the wedding, where she's marrying her daughter off to the gangster for the purposes of getting money for the rebellion, and then she finds out that her childhood friend, who she's been reconnecting with, doesn't actually care about the rebellion. He's just helping her out because he hopes he could finagle a relationship out of this. And when she says no, and I'm thinking, so you're gonna marry your daughter off to a gangster's son, but you're not gonna have a little affair with this guy, and it's like, but it's like, okay. And when Luthen decides, oh, we're gonna have to kill him because we can't buy him out, she's so, shocked. And it's like, I think they commented on that at one point, how privileged people like Mon Mothma are to be removed from all of the dirty work. It reminded me of
Yeah.
that line in Dark Knight Rises when Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character gets in Gordon's face for being, oh, you covered up the Harvey Dent thing, and he's like, dude, you need to have somebody to get their hands dirty, so you can keep doing your job. And it's kind of like the same thing here in this arc where Mon Mothma is just like, oh my god, we're gonna kill this guy, and she's so guilt-ridden about it that she drinks and dances the night away, while Luthen's attitude is so cavalier. He's like, well, what do you think we're doing here? It's like,
Right.
What do you think we do?
Get with the program
to achieve our ends.
Well, and I hadn't thought about it this way before too.
Yeah.
is how you're right. Like, how privileged is she that she doesn't is you're gonna marry your daughter off, but you're too good to have the affair with the. Yeah,
and she seems to be in a loveless relationship with her husband too. Like, there doesn't seem to be. I was expecting to get more from them.
Well, that was the thing, is they brought Ponytail Dude, like, you're like making him more sympathetic. Like, we hated him from his introduction, and now you're like, well, maybe he ain't so bad. It's like, wait, he's being the one that's kind of like, oh, I don't know. But one of my criticisms too is we never got resolution. We spent so much time on the arc with the daughter, and we never got a resolution to that.
Right, and it's like, that's something I criticized later on, is that when Mon Mothma eventually, spoilers, leaves to join the rebellion on Yavin, it's like, we don't really feel the loss that she's leaving behind her daughter and her husband. And Tony Gilroy confirmed that they did write a scene where, for reasons that he didn't say, she actually goes back to Chandrilla, to that state there, and everything's been abandoned because her husband and her daughter, upon finding out that she was with this rebel group, have disassociated themselves from her, basically excommunicated her. And in order to do that, they've completely abandoned their family home, and everything's covered up in sheets and draperies, and the dust and the leaves are blown through. And she really has a moment to feel like what she sacrificed. And that didn't fit in with the pacing or the story logic to get her back there. And that makes sense. But it's like, I felt we really needed maybe a falling out scene with the daughter or something. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, you do see the husband once again with his daughter's mother-in-law in the car. And he's
that's what I was saying, is we got resolution for him, but the one that we were really set up to care about was kind of the daughter and what happened.
And he doesn't seem to be like necessarily happy about being with, like, he's staring straight ahead, drinking the wine, just kind of sitting there looking completely dumbstruck because he didn't see that coming. So yeah, that's another little criticism, but I still think the wedding storyline, even though it's not an action story per se, was really good. Like, that editing and the way they hyped up that drama was excellent.
Well, and it really hit with a lot of people. It was an emotional note to where, what are we going to do? Is we're going to get white girl wasted and we're going to dance the night away, because what else can we do? It's like that. It hit. It's like people were like, yes, okay, I feel for her. I identify. Yes, that. And it's like, okay, it's not necessarily part of the my Star Wars, but I understand how many people resonated with that, and they were like, yes, great. It's the same thing for Cyril going and throwing himself down on the that's the next arc, but people resonated with that. It was good. People, yes, okay.
Yeah, there's human moments. I think it shows that she, because what Andor does really well is, by having this bigger ensemble cast, is you see the large contrast between different people in their, striving and endeavor for resistance against the Empire. You've got Cassian, he is originally from a tribal background, an indigenous community on a forest planet, and he memorably says, shouts that line to Jin in Rogue One, that I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Yeah,
His whole life has been about struggle and sacrifice. but it's only as an adult, as he's encountered these other people from different parts of the galaxy, from different communities, that he's realized the reason for the revolution is to take that little community you have and give it a chance to grow and give it a chance to have some oxygen. And it's the empire, it's the oppression, it's the the colonialism and the occupying forces on these planets that's suppressing community. And once he finds that kind of reconnection, obviously we'll get into it a bit later with Bix.
Yeah.
And so there's the manner of his heart's found community and solace, with um, characters from his childhood. And then he's also seen these other parts of the rebellion and how messy they are, whether it's like the rabble rousing on Yavin 4 when he brings the TIE Avenger back, and there's the infighting, or whether it's with the partisans and Saw Gerrera's very kind of a lot more armed and dangerous guerrilla warfare type strategies. There are these different strands of rebellion that need to coalesce, and season 2 needed to bring them together, and I think does that successfully.
Yeah.
And
And I think it leaves us for another place where Star Wars could go. We could see a lot more of this,
does.
and I would watch, like, the inner workings of Saw Gerrera's faction. Is
Yeah.
like, let us see this. We loved Enfys Nest or I did in
Me
Solo,
too.
where we saw essentially, like, I don't know that we need to see Han Solo starts the rebellion, but from that point of view of that story, he kind of does.
Mhm.
From this point of view, it's like, this is how Luthen creates the rebellion, or, you know, is there other factions that can come together that we can see? Like, they could bring in the how does Blue Squadron come to be? How do we get these trained pilots that are flying the X-wings? Or, it's the rebellion. Are they dealing with the Hutts and gambling to get money and financing and get all these ships? There's a lot more here that could be mined for future really good Star Wars content in that creation of the beginning of the rebellion.
Definitely. I'd say two
And
things.
just don't show us those dudes on Yavin 4 again. We don't need to know what happened.
I
I
don't
thought it
think
would have been
they have
funny.
not
I
much
thought it would have
lifespan
been
left,
funny
guys.
in a later arc if the camera could just pan by in the jungle and you see like their skeletons or something, like they've been eaten, to give the implication.
Yeah.
Just like, and don't draw attention to it, just like you kind of see it off in the background.
Yeah. Or really up in front, and like Cassian turns a corner
Just
and it's like that scene in Predator. You just see someone hung from a
because they
tree.
killed his contact, right? They killed
Yeah.
the guy that Cassian was supposed to meet there, right? So it's like, yes,
Yeah, they did.
this guy's not cool.
Yeah, they're
And then one of the
hopeless.
consequences, I guess, of not seeing this arc continue is that even though Cassian uses the TIE fighter to save most of the people on Mina Rao, we never see the fighter again, or hear about how
Oh
it
yeah,
helps.
it's like, why was that a thing? That was another one. I didn't even think about that one. It was just
Yeah.
a minor kind of thing. Is we don't see the rebels using TIE fighters. Is we don't see them talking about, oh, here's the weakness of the advanced TIE fighter. We found out that we could, exploit. But
I felt bad that the
yeah.
one guy got killed because Wilron wanted to go back and visit his girlfriend.
Yeah.
That was not cool.
Well,
A
I'm
lot was
surprised,
sacrificed.
and we'll get to it toward the end. I'm surprised how many people actually made it out of this. I wasn't expecting anybody to make it out of this.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
I think that was going to be a big question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like how, because we know how Rogue One ends, we know how Star Wars begins, we know Cassian's fate. But I think it speaks to the quality of writing in that you still have so much tension when Cassian's involved in those moments where we're following just him, even though we know he's the plot is protecting him. He's definitely finding a way out. But I think whether it's in Narkina 5 prison sequence in season 1, whether it's those intense moments where he first meets Luthen, and right at the beginning of the entire series, and you find out that the N1 Starpath unit is is an excuse for Luthen to find Cassian rather than the actual, agenda he had. That there's such good writing here that makes you feel like you want to hang on to every word and you do really want to listen in and focus. Every line of dialogue has significance to it, and it's just a much more intriguing element of the story, and it shows that well thought out writing and a good script can really make you invest in a storyline a lot more, even when you know the eventuality. The big spoiler alert has already been given to you, since 2016. But how you get there is, if that can capture your interest, then I think that is really successful story writing, and that's what we get through all of Cassian's scenes, and we get that through some of the others. I think just going back to the Chandrilan wedding arc, you do have that with Mon Mothma as well. You know that she's in such a privileged situation in that she is this 0.001% of Coruscant, of Chandrila, let alone in the galaxy, that she is so protected from any sign of discomfort or occupation or oppression. And that's one, because she's part of the system, but two, because she is culturally and generationally protected by this wealth, and yet she's still, through season 1 of Andor, we see her begin to connect with the everyday people who are starting to struggle more overtly in the Empire and against it. And then also, by having this entire arc at the beginning of season 2 focusing on Leader's wedding, she's showing that everyone's sacrificing things for the rebellion in some way, but she's able to be protected from overt danger herself at the beginning, but she can't protect everyone around her that she wants, despite her overwhelming privilege. And I think that, again, it's good writing, because it shows that there's a vulnerability to everyone. It just looks differently depending on what walk of life in the galaxy you're in and what your circumstances are. And she has by far and away the best social situation of anyone we've ever seen in Star Wars, really. Beyond, I guess, Palpatine, but you don't really see the wealth and the capital and the aesthetic luxury that people have. And you see that with Mon Mothma, and you see that she's still one, she's going to be a central cog in the rebellion machine. Two, that at some point she's going to have to walk away from all this. And I think as we get into the latter part of the season, it did come about more believably. And three, that she's, even though she's protected by so many abstractions from being physically exposed herself, she's still suffering, even if it's just psychological torment, emotional suffering, which she buries the way lots of humans bury it on Earth, which is, as you say, arms in the air, pumping that bass up and just surrendering to the moment. Because if she has to stop and think for a second in a quiet moment what's been going on, she won't be able to cope with it. And I think that coping mechanism, again, it's human storytelling that the entire crew managed to pull off well. And as you say, it does resonate.
So then we see one of the things that's carrying on is that Cyril has been put in charge of infiltrating this rebel group on Gorman, because they're trying to. He genuinely believes he's there to rout out these spies, and we can see he's clearly gullible, and that's not really why you're there. And Cassian's even sent there by Luthen at one point to assess whether or not this rebel faction is any good, and he says they're not. And Luthen's like, "Good, they'll fail, and there'll be a massacre. It's great, because that'll be the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the Empire down," echoing what Poe says in The Last Jedi. And Cassian's just horrified that Luthen was willing to go this far. So when Cassian doesn't have the stomach for it, he sends Val to do it for him, and she infiltrates this group, and she gives them false hope that this heist they're going to perform on the military convoy is going to work. And she tells them no guns. This one idiot screws up and brings a gun anyway, gets her girlfriend killed, and she gives this god-awful speech to him, getting mad at him for killing getting her girlfriend killed. It's like, lady, stop him. Wait a minute. I don't care how ridiculous it is that this happened. The fact that for you, best case scenario is that all these people get wiped out. Like, you're literally trying to provoke a massacre. That's what Luthen sent you there to do. And you're doing it by giving them false hope that this is going to happen. and now you're going to have the nerve to complain that one of your own died when you're trying to wipe out these people. It's like, shut the. I could not stand that. And I was like, you deserve to get whacked just for that speech. I'm sorry. I couldn't hold my tongue on that one. I just pissed me off. Kind of like at the end of season 1 where Luthen gives this great speech, but it really only amounts to him saying, well, I feel bad for the things I've done. It's like, you feel bad. It's like other people, like my mom literally has given up her only daughter. What have you done, Luthen? Oh, I feel bad for backstabbing strangers. Like, I mean, it's like, the second time they've given a really great, wonderfully written speech that just feels like I want to bitch slap.
Well, this show was about the big speeches. There were so many big speeches in this. The fight the Empire speech. Luthen's just why Luthen likes to have clandestine meetings in elevators or whatever. I don't know, but he has this speech, and then you get it's all over all the time. The entire point of the second arc is Mon Mothma giving a big speech, and everything around that. So,
well, it's also, I think again, she's the MVP storyline of that arc, because we find out that Luthen has actually been placing listening devices on certain people in the Senate, and they find out that one of their that because one of the antiques that this guy has been turned out to be a fraud, he's going to have some antiquities guy come in and verify, make sure he has legit copies of everything else. But Luthen knows that means they're going to discover the bugs that he's placed in there. So they have to go undercover to retrieve it. And it's a really tense scene where you have Mon Mothma not being able to hold her ground against Krennic because she's kind of letting him get to her as they're having this great back and forth, while the other people sitting around the table don't really know what they're talking about. Yeah. And then you have Lonnie and Clea on the other side trying to loose get the bug out. I'm like, that's a great showdown there with Luthen standing there as the spy master. I mean, the dialogue
that was like an episode of the 80s, 90s Mission Impossible show. It's like, dun, 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 dun. It's like you've got like another genre happening in Star Wars as we speak. It's the spy.
The Gorman arc was right, because the Gorman arc in the second set of or the second 3 episodes was kind of characterizing people. You see the Empire's coming along. They think they're going to be building a fortress there and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we understand that they're layering it for whatever's about to happen. But that the second arc is I think, again, that, Mon Mothma's storyline was the MVP of that one.
It still is that was probably the most tension and thing that came out in the show. Is that was your high point of her literally saying Palpatine. Now it got on my nerves a little bit that the biggest thing in the show, the biggest thing, and it's a comment, and it's just me.
Well, she doesn't give the big speech until after the massacre, though.
Right.
Yeah,
but the big speech is kind of the high point. It takes it away from it being the massacre, is the speech, and her actually calling out and naming Palpatine becomes the climax of the series. And it's just like, I was slightly disappointed that the climax of the series is a speech, and just that is all that is happening. It's telling you how much of a political drama Star Wars really kind of is that unifying in the Senate is what's happening.
And then in another one of those casualties of the structure of the show is we find out that Dr. Gorst's interrogation program is going to be expanded into being a major program, and Clea and Cassian go there and kill him and bomb the building at the end of the second arc, because that's how she's, as a way for her to be able to get some psychological peace of mind. But we don't get to see the fallout of that, like the investigation or, because this is going to be a major thing, because by virtue of the fact that we have to have a year-long time jump. So that's another thing that it was a good exclamation point, but it's like, okay, I would have liked to see the follow-up, but, it is what it is.
Yeah. There was only so much time and so much that they could put into this. Because it not being 10 seasons of the 7 seasons of the Clone Wars or whatever, where you get into all the minutia and you see in their arcs really kind of a Clone Wars arc of 3 or 4 episodes would generally be, this is the beginning, this is what happens, and this is the thing, and then this is the fallout of it, is this is the result of it. And then it even might be referred to in later seasons or other arcs that is, again, and even in the Clone Wars, you had time for a 3-episode arc about Cad Bane. And then, there was another arc about something else, but the 3-episode arc after that was a follow-up to the episode about Cad Bane or whatever. So,
yeah. I did
Did
find it a bit dramatically interesting that on the one hand, the Empire is trying to create a scenario where they're going to justify a massacre, but because Luthen and his spy ring don't know that, they're also trying to create a scenario that would provoke that. So it's like they're both like two barreling trains, and in the middle you have like the pacifist who's trying to unite the people and trying to put a stop to the chaos, and we see that come to a head in the 3rd arc, where Cyril finally finds out just how little he really matters, how much he's been lied to by his own girlfriend, that he's just another cog in the machine. I was really surprised when he chokes her out over this, and I was like, oh geez. And yet she still cared about him after that. And it's like, you're getting into an abusive relationship now, but you're you're still trying to protect him. But God, the editing, the build up to when the stormtrooper, it's like they made stormtroopers scary, and it's like you're waiting for this terrible thing to happen, and Cassian's there to try and kill. And it's just I love it when Cyril just goes apeshit on Cassian in this really brutal fight that I didn't expect to see from Cyril of all people. And I just love the punchline where he's like, Cassian's like, "Who are you?" Which just completely destroys Cyril as a person. And he is so broken in that moment that he pauses just long enough in shock for the pacifist of all people to kill him, which I really liked.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's just
but that was a great that episode of Andor, that whole massacre and the way they structured that is a bit peak Disney Star Wars right there.
Yeah, incredible filmmaking, definitely.
But we didn't get to know what happens to his mom. Nobody saw.
Well, we did. She saw on the holonet and she's breaking down crying because she believed. I thought it was funny earlier in the season when he pretended to, when he pretends to be on the side of the Gormans and he's like, "Oh, Mom, you can't listen to that made-up holonet shit. It's just propaganda." Even though he doesn't believe it's propaganda, he actually thinks it, which is another thing that he got mad at Deidre about, because he genuinely believed all the PR. And finding out that this planet technically of Imperials, I'm like, yeah, they're in a different jurisdiction, but that, you're willing to slaughter your own loyal subjects for whatever you're doing, was something that really shook his faith. And even Deidre kind of breaks down and cries about it when faced with the reality of what happened.
Yeah, I wanted more resolution of that. It was like, what happens? Like, did she not like immediately get on the phone and call and just bitch out Deidre? It's like, come on. It's like, where was that?
Oh, the mother-in-law from hell episode of Andor. Maybe that's the horror thing we heard that might be coming down the pipeline.
The real monster was Catherine Hunter.
I know what it's going to be. The mom is gonna get a job at the Narkina 5 prison where Deidre works.
There you go. Yeah, but that was it. Now the second arc, I really enjoyed how deep dive they went and how they immediately connected, because we knew that they're going to connect the entire series immediately to Rogue One, but they went in here and connected that end of that second arc immediately to Secret Cargo from Star Wars Rebels. It's like, yes, bring some love to it. I mean, the only
third arc is because at the end of the third arc is when she gives the big speech, and that was another great thing with the MVP of Mothma's storylines, where Cassian has to go save her, and they find out that Bail's ring is compromised. And I love the reaction when Mon Mothma's driver, realizing that she has given this speech, is like, getting really angry at her, pointing the gun, and Cassian does what he has to. He shoots him. And Mon Mothma's horrified.
Yeah.
And again, it's like that privilege thing. Like, it's like, what do you think we're doing? Like, what was I supposed to let him arrest you? You know?
Well, yeah, this is more towards the third arc, but that's one of the
well, that's where
criticism
we're at.
I.
Gorman was third arc, the
Well,
massacre. Yeah.
okay. So where
Tennessee.
I really a little criticism that I get is no, that's
Yeah, there she is. Sherry says it's the end of the third arc that ties to Secret Cargo, not the second.
okay.
Because Mom Mothma gives the speech at the end of the third
Rebellion.
arc, and then she takes
Yeah.
off.
You're right. It's the end of the third arc.
Yeah.
Okay, the end of the third arc that ties to Secret Cargo, and that's the best of it that it goes in there. But so into the fourth arc that what I'm getting into is into the fourth arc is you don't see Mon Mothma turn from this into the military leader that we see in the original trilogy. She's still wishy-washy. She's not that person yet. And how does she become that person in like the hours between the two? I thought it was great in that arc where she's just absolutely horrified and whatever that Cassian is Cassian's already there. He's been in this fight since he's 6 years old. He's ready to do what needs to be done. She's been in this fight for a long time too, but her fight isn't seeing what he's seen.
Right. She's in charge of she's basically the financier. She's got to get the money and funnel it all to them, because all of her charity programs, while some of them are probably legit charities to help out people hurt by the Empire, it's also funneling money to to the rebellion. And another thing they didn't follow up on is that the reason she married her daughter to the gangster's son was because she needed access to the gangster's funds. I assume they got the funds because they don't really mention that again. So
I guess. But how do you keep the funds? How does he keep sending the money through once they figure out?
Well, once she's found out, once she gives that speech, she's cut off. That's done.
And it's just like, was that worth it?
But that's 2 years. But that's 2 years later, though, as well.
Guess.
So
so she's it's 2 years of funding the rebellion from her
right,
generational wealth.
But you're right, because I think had it not been for the Gorman massacre, she wouldn't have given that speech. She would have kept getting the funding from the gangster. But after the massacre happened, she's like, no, we have to say something about this.
Yeah. I guess. And it's like the levels of wealth that is implied on there as to how much that he's able to finance, other than like how much money are we talking about? Like, because if she just like sold the freaking house on Chandrilla, how
yeah, I think that it's I mean, it's showing again like the cost of rebellion in literal terms, and how hierarchical it can be. You've got Cassian and everyone on the ground risking their lives, on site amongst genocide and striving for rebellion, and then you've got Mon Mothma, who again is seemingly protected but still feels that the moment the Gorman massacre, that genocide is the point of no return for her, and she believes that now she actually physically must take a stand as well and put her life on the line by making this announcement and then escaping, because otherwise it'd be the very last thing she'd do. There's no chance that she would have just been put in a cell in Narkina 5 like Dedra had. What the Empire would have done with her would have been a lot worse. So she had to flee at that time, and I think the getting Cassian to be her handler through it all, even though Bail Organa has his team there, as we mentioned, that entire dynamic really just added so much tension to the moment, because you didn't actually have just the shot of her giving her speech. It was intercut with our spies running around the Senate, Cassian trying to find her. I think it was kind of funny how you had the head of security who Cassian gave his chip to, saying, "I'm Ronnie Guja." He was a bit haphazard and then tried to get the door open on Mon Mothma's pod, and there were two security kids who were like, "Well, that was repaired yesterday," and then he just goes nuts. It was good, like comedic timing there, but the entire arc of that rebellion speech that Mon Mothma was giving, and then seeing how you obviously had the female agent who was compromised in Bail's squad, killing one of her spy allies, and then heading towards the gate where Mon Mothma and Cassian were going to come down to. That entire standoff was excellent, and I thought it was really good how they brought back Mon Mothma's aide, who was Luthen's plant, which she dismissed earlier in the episode as being another betrayal of trust for her. That she was, really just not just getting tired, but getting really sick with Luthen's interfering in her life. But that's the only reason she had a chance, and the only reason she made it out alive. So. Where Luthen is a hard man to trust, and his means are very brutal and cold and calculating, the ends for her were justified, even if there was a lot of collateral damage along the way.
Well, and I like how in the fourth arc is Cassian, who really didn't love Luthen's method to begin with, is
well, we
singing
also
the
had
praises.
that.
He's like, oh no, he did all of this. All of this is him. This is where this came from. Where nobody else was really kind of acknowledging.
Right, and that's the thing that I wanted to again bitch slap everybody on the Rebel Council, because it's.
We're losing.
Yeah, your audio is cutting out a little bit there, Kat.
Yeah, and it's like, again, the people on the Rebel Council being upset with Luthen because of his method. And, it's like Saw Gerrera says the same thing to them at one point. He's like, you should be spending less time getting mad at me and fighting the Empire. And they're trying to distance themselves from what Saw and Luthen are doing. But again, they're naive in that they don't seem to understand that their money is financing these operations, which are crucial to our success. And,
right.
You have that mini arc where Wilron has to go teach Saw's crew how to steal the fuel, and then Saw gives that completely deranged, beautiful speech that feels like something Kurtz would give from Clips Now. And then it turns out that the guy he was training was a spy, and so Saw kills him. And at first I thought that because Saw wasn't going to let him leave when the third arc started, and Cassian's like, so where have you been? I thought he has been with Saw for a year, but he's like, no, he'd been somewhere else. And so whatever. But they did establish Saw relocating to Jeddah, which was, needed. And this leads into my criticisms for the fourth arc. The only two things they really needed to, or three things they needed to do, or two things for purposes of tying it into Rogue One, was establish Cassian being sent on the mission to Kafrene, which we see at the beginning of Rogue One. They did that. And then establish that Saw ends up on Jeddah, and they did that. So the only major storyline they had to wrap up was the Dedra Luthen story. And I was shocked that in the first two scenes, they end that whole drama. It's like you could have had a really great, spy versus spy, excellent dialogue writing. I couldn't believe it. Like the very first scene, Lonnie's like, oh, by the way, this is all for a Death Star project, and my cover's blown. And of course, Luthen is going to kill him. And then the way that Dedra just walks in there and brings that, the Starlight Drive, it's like, okay, it's a good scene, but it didn't feel like it had as much dramatic weight to me because I wasn't expecting that like right at the start of the arc, because she's been doing with the whole Gorman thing for the last couple years. And so I just thought they could have, it is great how that arc goes. Like I totally buy it that Luthen would try and, kill himself before being taken alive, and how Clea has to infiltrate the hospital, and that heartbreaking scene where she has to pull him off life support to ensure that he won't be interrogated. But it's like, couldn't we have stretched this a bit further? Because the last two episodes feel like fluff. And I disagree with the idea that, Rogue One is the finale. It's like, no, you could still have an exciting, well-written, structured final arc around those characters and that conflict. And I just thought that kind of got thrown under the bus really quick. And I'm not sure what the thinking was there.
Yeah, a lot of the wrapping up in the fourth arc is what my criticisms of the show are. Is, like I said, is you don't see Mon Mothma being there. They're just sitting in a smaller room on Yavin 4 arguing back and forth. Yeah. I don't like what they did to Bail Organa, where he's just sitting there and he's the one that's like, arguing, well, Luthen and blah, 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 and we didn't do this, so let's just wait. Is granted, we know where everything's going to go, but this kind of makes it look like, well, if Bail had taken action a day or two earlier, maybe some of the events of Rogue One might not have gone the way that they did. Let's not just sit back and like, why are you playing political games now? You're out. You're in the rebellion. This is the time for action. But he wasn't. He's like, delay, delay, delay. I don't believe you.
Mhm.
I don't like what they did there. Bail Organa was like a person of action in the prequel trilogy. I don't love that. I don't like that we got resolution for Ponytail Dude, but not the daughter. I don't like that Mon Mothma didn't become the military leader that we see that she is so very soon thereafter. I don't like the fact that Cassian knows that Bix is still alive. I don't think he knows about the kid, but I don't like the relationship that he seems to have with Jin, knowing that Bix is still alive. And a lot of people are arguing back and forth as they're rewatching Rogue One, and it's like, well, it's a friendship, and it's a comforting, and it's like,
well, it kind of does things worse for Rogue One, because when he says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, even when I first saw Rogue One, it's like, yeah, Ginny has. He shouldn't be getting in his face. And this series really lays it on thick that she shouldn't really be getting in his face about this. Yeah, it's just why we need Tales of the Rebellion.
more.
Now, on the positive side, I did like that bit where Krennic has the exchange with the head of the ISB, and he's like, look, I can't protect you from this. You know, the fact that you've had all these security leaks, that one of your top preferred agents, Deidre, has been aware of these leaks for years and hasn't done anything because of her little obsession with finding the spy master. This is compromising the whole Death Star project. And he's like, well, you should be surprised that you kept it under wraps as long as you have so far. But Krennic is nice enough to give him the option to, kill himself rather than face tribunal. And I love that bit where the stormtroopers are outside and they hear the blast, and but then the corporal holds up his hand and he's like, and I'm like, oh, that was so good. So it's not true that Deidre's the only one who takes the fall. Like the head boss takes the fall at the ISB for screwing that up. And we did get the flashbacks of how Luthen joined switch sides with the massacre on Naboo. And
that
I like
was
that
a little bit of weirdness too, how just random children show up on the enemy's vehicles. That's like, wait, isn't that exactly what happened with Andor?
And I like that he blows up the bridge on Naboo from the deleted scene from episode 2, because it's emphasizing that his first attack is against the Emperor's home planet, which is pretty cool. And we got to see how him and Clea started making money on the antiquities thing so they could start their rebel fight, which is pretty cool to see. And then Deidre, it's like, I'm sorry, but Krennic was right. It's like, okay, you found this spy master. You go in there, he literally brandishes a knife in front of you, and you turn your back on him. It's like, what did you think this guy was going to do? It's like, you could have just had guys go in there in plain clothes and throw gas grenades or something and had him. And so not only did you screw that up, but you've allowed these major...
Yeah,
you've been aware
of ego.
And you've been aware of these major security leaks with the Death Star project for upwards of 2 years now and didn't say anything, didn't put a stop to it, because you were hoping that you could use that to find information about the spy master, which is, again, why I thought the final arc should have beefed up the whole showdown between her and Luthen, and that have the whole 3 episode, because the final arc should be really the biggest, the one that you ascend the drama to the peak, and they didn't really do that. And I disagree with the idea that people are like, oh, well, Rogue One's the finale, we needed to wrap things up. It's like, the second and third episode didn't spend that much of that arc, didn't spend much time wrapping, a lot of fluff. And it's like, that just, it felt almost anticlimactic. And, she, of course, ends up in Narkina 5.
It went down with that. And so you could be on that down level that Rogue One starts with, because Rogue One starts with a lot of exposition and telling you. But if you had been up there, that would have been fine. That Rogue One goes back down and then Rogue One leads to its climax. That would have been fine. You could have ended it. You could have ended it at a climax, a cliffhanger, and then Rogue One is the conclusion. Like they did well with some of the arcs, where it's a cliffhanger and then you go. But
like we didn't even
Yeah.
get the scene where to see Deidre's reaction to finding out that the spy master is actually this guy who's just right down the street from the ISB the entire time.
yeah,
It's like she already knows that information when she walks in there. It's like those are the payoff scenes you kind of want to see, you know?
well,
Yeah, that was lost in the year format, I think,
and
because
I
And
wanted
again, the whole arc of how Luther or how Lonnie found out about the Death Star project, that could have
well,
been
I
the
wanted
focus of
so
the
much
final arc.
more of K2SO. There was so much more of
a lot
so
more
much
attention.
more that I wanted. Is we
I
got to see why he trusts him and what K2 did for them and for the rebellion, but we didn't get to see, the year of buddy hang on old pal, whatever, that made them as close as they were in Rogue One. We didn't get to see enough of that. Now I did hear that a lot of that there was a lot more of that in the original treatise or storyline that just got cut because you needed to do other stuff. And I was like,
Well, that was one of the original ideas for the show. Was going to be like the Mandalorian weekly adventures of Cassian and K2, and they decided that's not what we're going to do here.
yeah.
Which makes
Thank
sense because you need it to
goodness.
be a different show. But man, those KX droids are so deadly. That is amazing.
Mhm.
They're brutal, and I
Yeah.
love how. I mean, yeah, Cassian going to save Clay, thinking he's going to save Luthen, saves Clay. That was an okay action bit, but again, I think it could have been something
Right.
better.
Yeah. The Cassian and K would be a series all to itself. You could completely do
Absolutely.
that. And you could still do that in animation because we know that
Yeah.
Alan Tudyk is down for voice acting all day long. So that would be that would be something that we could see to there. But just yeah, there's just so much stuff in the fourth act that we wanted more of. I do agree that it really does make you want to immediately go and watch Rogue One. You want to immediately go, and you guys could totally check out the watch along that we did this past week with Marty Matuas, of watching Rogue One and seeing where this all goes and where it ends up. And then, of course, this week we're going to be watching A New Hope, which Rogue One just goes right into. This is like the longest watch along that you need to do ever in your life. Is we have to watch Andor season 1, and then we have to watch season 2, and then we immediately have to watch Rogue One, and we immediately have to watch. Whew.
Well, it's a
Andor
new
season
prequel trilogy. Andor,
Yeah.
Andor season 1, Andor season 2, and Rogue One are your
Yeah.
prequel trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is leading into all the things.
I think
And then the
way the kind of rise and fall of tempo between the rebellion, Welcome to the Rebellion kind of arc ending with Mon Mothma and Cassian escaping Coruscant. There was always gonna, I think, be a lull after that, and I I think it fits the story that the final episode of the series was quite slow, and it was a kind of gradual reconnecting with everything that we'd seen, eventually leading up to that final walk that Cassian makes, and the kind of closing montage of checking in with all our characters who are still alive and where they are. Um, I didn't think the series needed a crescendo to finish on, and I feel that it does fit in line with the pacing and tone of the series overall. If you had a dramatic action sequence at the end, I don't think it would fit thematically that well. But I also don't think for those, and there are some viewers who might have just only watched Andor and not know about or not have watched Rogue One, or not be expecting to come to that immediately afterwards. They want to see just things tie up in some way within this season, within the end of the series, and I think the final episode does that quite neatly. There are some threads that are left hanging, as we mentioned, that we'd like to see more of. I think Mon Mothma's final role in the kind of hours before what becomes Rogue One would have been interesting to see, and I do agree that I didn't like Bail Organa's antagonism within the alliance that were on Yavin 4, and it did seem like he was a roadblock initially and quite dismissive of Cassian, and and took a while to come around. But I think for most other storylines, they converged, I think, the way that I wanted them to converge, and early on looking at Andor, I was thinking we've got this big ensemble of characters. I don't need everyone to die. It's okay. The galaxy's large enough, even though we're going to have everyone on Yavin 4 and the Empire is going to be Death Star and then orbiting everything around that. The galaxy's big enough to not have characters killed off just because we don't see them in the next property or project that comes chronologically afterwards.
I hate that excuse that fans use. Well, they're not in the next movie, so we have to kill them. It's like, dude, the movies take place on the course of a couple days each. It's like, oh, we had to kill everybody in Rogue One. It's like, no, you didn't. It's like people need to use their imaginations. They need to think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did like the fact that
not everyone's on soundstage 7, 8, and 9.
Is that Bix got out of it alive? Okay, fine. I expected Bix to bite it like 2 arcs ago. It's just like, no, she's gonna go.
And that whole thing with the Force Healer had everything to do with it, because the Force Healer thought that Cassian was destined for greatness, and so Bix decided, well, then I have to leave to force him to do. And I kind of, again, I want to see the reaction from her when she finds out that Cassian isn't coming back.
I also don't really love the fact that her safe place is the place that they had to escape from, that she wasn't safe before.
Yeah, that she nearly got assaulted. You really want to go back there?
That feels like
that was a weird. That was a weird choice. Is why is she back there? You could have made her. Oh, it's a wheat planet. Let's use the same place and make it Lothal this time. Okay.
It's but then people would have been like, "Oh, where was she during Rebels? What happens next?"
Those hands are so dim.
The kid is Ezra. No.
Well, it's kind of like that trope in Star Wars where they find out they need to go to a planet, but they know the exact spot to go to on the planet, which they shouldn't, but they do anyway,
right?
Because it's Star Wars. It's like, oh, they're gonna run into each other. It's like, no, it's a whole planet.
There's only one place on the entire planet. Is Tatooine has, Mos Espa, Mos Eisley, and that's it. The Junlin Waste. It's right
and
there.
And then that other place where Cobb Vanth is from, I can't remember the name.
Freetown. They renamed it. I thought it was Mos Espa. I don't know.
No.
Or Mos Pelgo. Mos Pelgo. Maybe.
No, Pelgo. That's it. So Mos Pelgo, Mos Espa, and Mos Eisley. And the Junlin Waste.
They're within walking distance. Or
little land speeder between.
But yeah, it is. I mean, it's a great show. We're seemingly picking it apart, but that's what we do here. But there's so many little threads that you can pull and go that make this a good show. I like the fact this is what we do with the original trilogy. Is you pick on this one little thread and you go. That's what we were talking about earlier. Is the entire Clone Wars animated show came from what could have been a throwaway line to where I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. The what? And then we get a series that tells us about it. That's the kind of thing here is Cassian and Bix's child something significant going forward. I mean, there's a lot of time to where we could see that. Somebody may write a good storyline behind what becomes of that child or what they do. There's all of these things. The Tales of the Rebellion that Sherry's mentioning is like, what happens to so-and-so? What happens to so-and-so? Where is everything? And we were talking earlier too, is, all those early factions of the rebellion we could see that is just like, oh, this is how this group came up. We could see more of Enfys Nest from Solo. We could see Saw's group and this group and that group. And there are undoubtedly other groups that we haven't seen that you could just invent and have free reign.
And they've done this from Rogue One. I think that's what's great, is that you had parts of Rogue One that inevitably would lead to other storytelling, as we've had with Andor. But the Guardians of the Will, they're so mysterious and still connected to the Force, but in a different way to just the way we've seen the Jedi. That's a huge element that was added to the galaxy. The idea of harvesting the Death Star, I think, was harvesting kyber crystals to create itself to be a super weapon. I think that was an idea that was central and originated in the conceptualization behind Rogue One. So that film has added so much to the galaxy. And then we've been really lucky to have a fully fleshed out 2 series of Andor that have done so much more and given us so many other characters and moments, and other spaces in the galaxy that we hadn't seen before, and that we'd like to maybe revisit and see more of in the future.
I mean, I like the way that it took, and I don't want them to go with this format all the time, as is what they do, and overuse it. But what would happen if we got a series that showed that was between A New Hope and Empire? Is how did they establish the base on Hoth? You know what was happening there. There's an end point. You know what's going to happen, but all of this stuff happened over here to make that happen.
I think they established the Hoth thing in the Star Wars Marvel comics that connect 4 and 5. I think I'd have to finish reading them, but
yeah, that's entirely possible, because I have a lot of the early stuff of the Marvel as I have holes. That's what I'm trying to go back and recollect.
And I think that Star Wars needs to get away from the fact that everybody's interrelated. Like, do we need to find out what happened to Cassian's kid? No. But I mean, if they do it, they might. But it's like, let's.
I'm saying if they have a good story, I don't need to hear that story if it's not good. If you're just gonna like, that that was so and so or whatever, or make that kid an already established character. No, don't do that.
Feels like Sherry's Tales of the Rebellion idea would be nice for that.
Yeah,
yeah, an animated short. That would work.
Give us something that tells us what there is. If it's good. You don't have to. We don't have to know what happened to everybody. If it was just like this, that, the other.
Naladoc. Yeah, Naladoc showing up at the end of the review.
Come on, it's like we've been going on for a while about all of the little things. But Andor, like I said, there's a lot of little threads that we could pick on, and I put down in the description for this episode. You're likely going to see us talk about this again here. It's like, just take one little thing, one little question, one little part of it, and you can go further down the rabbit hole. Well, and yeah, Sherry, is if he lives his life out as a farmer, go right ahead. That's grand. Or, they could be that he's the farmer, he's the wheat farmer, but then he comes in to be something more important, like a certain moisture farmer did when he turned 18. His life got turned upside down and he was not that anymore. This could happen as well. So like I said, is I would love to see more stories about more things that happen to this if they do it well. If they're going to just throw out some garbage to be throwing out some garbage, no, I don't need it.
Yeah, the big takeaway has to be the way this was made is the way forward for any project that will be high quality and want you to talk about it with your friends and family and recommend it and say, hey, watch this. It's really good. It's worth your time. When it's been constructed so carefully and with such care and with such interest, we don't need to have everybody connected to everyone. I'd much rather never hear from the final characters like Bix and her child ever again unless there's a good story to tell.
And I'm not saying it has to be a story that's related to anything going on. Maybe we hear that this child did something completely separate from the original OT rebellion, as something happened out in the other reaches of the universe that was going on simultaneously that's not even over here.
Yeah. I think one of the successes of this show has been that it makes you feel like you're watching real people live their lives, but it's in the trappings of empire and rebellion, and how things get towards a grander scale, and people partake in collective action, create community, find each other, strive for these higher ideals that are much bigger than themselves. We're just ordinary people at the end of it, and to be able to see people come together, I think is really good.
There you go. The Andor child.
I was waiting for the. It definitely felt like
here in the chat from the PC watch. Yes, Jason and Andor will team up at the Battle of Exegol.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you come up with a good plan, let's see it. But otherwise, I don't know. But so I think that it kind of about wraps up like our first level of discussion on this. Like I said, that I think there will be much more in the future, and all sorts of good stuff coming out on the VCN. Oh, the sequel era, not the
Yeah.
not within it. Like we were saying, is it doesn't have to connect to the established what's already there. If something happens over there, and I think it would be cool to do another genre as well. This was a lot of genres, like kind of a cop show at some points, and it was like a spy show at some points. Is give us something else. Give us another genre. It doesn't have to be sci fantasy. You can really put something in there.
I'd say
But
Luthen is going to go down as a top tier Star Wars character. That's one of the big
I would
takeaways
think
I have
so.
from the series.
Yeah, and I will
Yeah.
be happy to see him once he starts going out and about and doing things and cons and I'll that's going to be amazing. But speaking of cons, again, we have coming up that the VCN is really going to have a large presence, and we're going to have all sorts of fun at Rebel Scum Con. August is coming so fast. I can't believe that we're very nearly to June here. But the Frisco Conference Center, and we are going to be, our event is we are going to have a Boonta Eve Special Edition Texas, right? The VIP tickets for that are sold out, but there are plenty of other tickets that you can get. You can come in. We have a ton of guests that are additional to the con itself. A lot of them kind of tie in. It's a tie-in kind of guest thing that you can see great people that you wouldn't get to normally and otherwise. So come out and join us for that. And then coming up in the coming week, it is Memorial Day. So we won't have a new episode of Clone Wars Revisited. It's Clone Wars Revisited. I think we're gonna air an old episode. I think we might air the inaugural episode of that. And then Tuesday, come on, join us. If you want to have these discussions, come out and join us on the Zoom. You can get right in there and have your opinions known, said, and we can argue back and forth on was that a good thing or a bad thing or what thing. No, that is not a sitcom. That's a creepy something. That's like
I've seen the promos for this sitcom. It's great.
Wow. I question that one. But yeah, come out and join us for all the fun on the VCN this week. We will be on the watch along this Thursday. We are watching A New Hope. We just did Rogue One last week, and you can watch them right there in succession. And because they just this series, it really does. It makes me want to go back. And even though I just watched it last Thursday, I want to sit down without people talking over it, like me and Jeff and Marty were on there, and I want to watch it again just to see what my thoughts and impressions are, me sitting there by myself and going, oh, this is how that related to that and this. And I really want to see if I feel again, what was the relationship going between Cassian and Jen? What was it? Platonic? Was it romantic? Was it a flirt? Questions you want to know from watching this show, and I think that is a good thing. It is content that makes you want more content.
Yeah, I think it's a good testament to any Star Wars that it stands alone well by itself, but then it also makes you want to revisit, the classics and the highlights. It's giving us nostalgia without actually presenting us with nostalgia. It's giving us high enough quality material to then be nostalgic about what came before and how it links. And that's a huge strength. And I don't think any Star Wars show has done that before. So hopefully this can continue in some other form, even though we know Tony Gilroy and his team are finished.
All right. So enjoy May 25th and keep your Star Wars celebrations going. Do your watch along of the original Star Wars. Just watch the movie today, 48th anniversary. And that'll be quite fun. And there's the sitcom idea. I love it. I'm there for it. Three's Company and the Jeffersons. Deidre and Cyril played totally straight and serious like an Andor. All the wacky shenanigans come from the neighbors in their apartment building. That's great.
Get to see more of Carson.
That's you're not wrong. And then saw that it wasn't just Jen's story; it was also Cassian's. See, I think I saw it as Cassian's story to begin with, not so much.
Really?
Jin.
That's why I thought it would have been better if he was the central protagonist of Rogue One instead of Jin, because he has the protagonist arc in that movie.
Yeah. So I mean, it was kind of marketed as Jen's, but right.
And so she's still front and center.
I mean, and like I said, we can discuss this more. Is the one I'll throw out is Andor, the Top Gun Maverick to Rogue One. No. But it's not a sequel, but a prequel. Yeah, it's K2's story, and we said that when you didn't show up earlier in the show, we said that was what we could see much more of. That we would love to see that in animation as a buddy cop kind of, or a buddy adventure of the week with Cassian and K2.
Yeah, I mean George Lucas did.
Hey, we need to do. Oh, come on! You could have put it off for an hour
on Memorial Day.
Well, Memorial Day is technically tomorrow.
Tomorrow, so I mean, on a holiday weekend.
Yes. But that being said, I've got to kind of do the same thing, and I've got to go try and get my lawnmower started. So, but
I've got to take a 400-mile drive up north today.
Woo! Road trip. So, well, everyone, enjoy yourself. Enjoy your holiday weekend. If you have such sort of a holiday weekend, because I guess you don't there.
No, it's one of the few that's aligned. So it's a UK bank holiday weekend.
Excellent.
So yeah,
perfect.
Good Saturday, Sunday, Monday thing.
So, well, everyone who has it, enjoy your holiday weekend, and we will see you again in 2 weeks talking about who knows what.
Happy Star Wars Day. Oh, and remember the countdown to Old Man Yelling at Clouds, Sunday, July 13th. Dave will be yelling at this for our Superman review. So you'll have to make it on the schedule, Dave, to make sure you see it opening weekend.
Every freaking trailer I see of that. More and more.
Oh,
I can't wait to talk about. It's gonna be great.
The trailer.
Okay, should be shot. For alluding to the original,
this will be the VCN event episode of the summer. It will be Dave ripping apart the Superman movie, Sunday, July 13th at 8 a.m. Pacific. Be there, be square.
All right. Oh, see everyone later.
May the Force be with you. Happy Star Wars Day.
May the Force be with you all. Happy holiday weekend.